Hi, it's Maria, and I'm doing another Forgiveness to Love video, and this is my life exposed here. And in today's video, I'm going to talk about the crimes that either I've experienced, that either I've witnessed, or that I know as a result of my family. And it really has been over the course of the last 25 years, if you can believe that. And sometimes I find that hard to believe. It's been since 1996 when I first saw a family law attorney to initiate the divorce proceedings. And then it seems like life just, what do they say? When you put your foot in the river, all of a sudden it takes you where it wants to go, not where you want to go. This has been a very difficult video for me to even think about recording. And right when I was ready to push the start button, my eyes started tearing. I sneezed. I had this coughing jag. So there's probably a lot of energy that doesn't want me to put this out. And yet I know that this is something that can help a lot of people. And I want to share why I'm sharing this info actually with you. And nothing has changed actually in regard to these crimes. And to my knowledge, they still are going on and they're affecting millions of people. As for my situation, I am not aware that any perpetrator has been investigated, indicted, found guilty, incarcerated, treated, rehabilitated, or for any of the victims. Have there been any apologies, restitution of any sort, or abatement of any criminal activity, including the physical and psychological torture that would allow individuals to become whole again after having experienced sheer torture, really. And so, for many of the aberrant behaviors that human beings have displayed, they continue. And the reason I've put out about 50 videos in my Forgiveness to Love series, it's not about sharing dirty laundry. It's not about having a victim mentality or even trying to embarrass anyone. I think they actually do a pretty good job of embarrassing themselves, right? Because I don't think that the perpetrators in my family are necessarily even capable of feeling any embarrassment. I do believe that in ego and in entitlement, certain psychopathic behaviors and allow individuals to feel almost a sense of entitlement to it. I think it's more actually about them harboring hatred and envy and jealousy and even some psychopathology, truly. So what I've endeavored to share as I expose but a teeny tiny bit of what I see going on in our world, destroying innocent human beings, both behind closed doors as well as in public view, left, right, and center. And it has nothing to do with the level of affluence or whether there's impoverishment. It really doesn't matter. I see more and more crimes. I see more and more victims. I see more and more pain and suffering. And so as we reflect on what Martin Luther King told us years ago, and that may actually ring more true today, is that darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. And along with that, hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that as well. And so the question remains, what do we do? I guess the simplest answer to that is to stay on our path and to move forward doing what's right. Again, we have no control over anyone else's behavior. We only have control over ourselves and how we see the situation. As we align ourselves with positivity and trust and faith, knowing that there is a larger plan at play and that we are responsible for attracting those certain experiences that we ultimately do attract based on our frequency, our vibration, based on our attitude, based on our gratitude, really, based on who we are, what we think, what we say, what we do. And so all of those things come into play. And I will begin the list. And I have found over, I think, about 120 crimes. And I must say that they are not limited. It's not limited to 120, but those are what I've quickly come up with. And most of the crimes that I see involve a conspiracy of sorts. And so that would include more than just the three in my life who have instigated and created so much of the turmoil that apparently was the goal. But as we begin the list, and I did put them in alphabetical order, so there's abusive sexual contact, and that is true for many individuals. And sometimes we don't even want to admit that we've experienced things like that. But there's also aggravated assault, aggravated identity theft, assault and battery. There's bank fraud, blackmail, breaking and entering, bribery, burglary, business malpractice. And remember, I had to sit and think of so many of the things that I witnessed and I saw and I observed and I felt and I was told and I experienced. And as I was really in disbelief, actually, when I looked at the 120 or so crimes. I found it appalling on one level. And on another level, I really pitied the people that were involved in this, because how lost must someone be in order to be committing these crimes? And that's really what affected me more than anything, truly. So after business malpractice, buying, receiving, or possessing stolen property, yes, there was a lot of stolen property. There were carjackings, accidents, or other motor vehicle incidents to thieve personal property and seriously injure passengers and others. So that's not exactly a crime that you would find in the legal dictionary or somewhere, but in criminal law book. Yet I just tried to explain it in the best way I knew how. Along with that, there was certification of checks, which is fraud, child abuse, coercion, computer crimes, right? Concealment of assets, continuing a criminal enterprise, conveying false information. And then, of course, there was copyright fraud. And so I go back to Martin Luther King because he is such an inspiration for this little Greek girl who actually spent some time growing up in Gary, Indiana, and attended the pilot school for desegregation in the country. And it was called Horseman High School. And all of a sudden, in this very affluent neighborhood, 3 busloads of inner city children were bused to Horseman High School, junior high and high school. And it totally changed the dynamics of the school and of the neighborhood. And I think I've mentioned in one of my videos that, in fact, my father really wanted to send me to an Eastern boarding school. And I said, oh, no way, I'm not leaving home. Then he said, okay, well, I'll send you to St. Mary's of Notre Dame, because that was just about an hour away. And I said, no, I'm going to stay. And so I finished out that year there. One of the Jackson brothers, I guess, was even in my music class. I was told that, but I didn't know him at the time anyway. It was somebody named Tito. It was just all so shocking for a little girl, really, a little Greek girl who really had no idea what it would be like to live among all different types of people. Because again, when you're a little Greek girl, you kind of have a little Greek enclave, and all your relatives are Greek and all of their friends are Greek and everything. So to even branch out into the regular white community was a big deal, but to branch out into a racially mixed community was interesting, and yet it was an experience that I really really appreciated having gone through, because I learned so very much. And so anyway, when I think of Martin Luther King, because he's always been one of my heroes, I think of the one quote where he says, let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. And I think that that really encapsulates so much of what my message to you here is about all of these crimes. Because as we continue on the list, and then I'll do a little narrative later, but counterfeiting, credit and debit card fraud, crimes aboard aircraft, criminal damage, criminal infringement of a copyright, cruelty to children, cyber crimes, date rape, yes, defamation, to deprive or sabotage legal representation. And my father and I went to see several attorneys. At one point, I had actually interviewed 12 different attorneys, and none would take my case. And then this year, when I was living in California and I came to Florida to see what I could do about the estate, I spoke with probably at least another dozen or so. And the same thing held true. They weren't allowed, they said they weren't allowed to involve themselves in my case. So I'm not really sure. I know that so many things have been hidden, and so much of it will all come to light, and it will make sense. It's just that now in the nebula, it doesn't make sense to me. The deprivation and sabotage of medical care, which I've spoken of at length on some of my videos. We so desperately want to believe, right, that our physicians are of integrity, that they care and they do their best when dealing and potentially treating us. In the videos that I shared, I showed that my experience actually had been one of despair, and shockingly, quite the contrary from what I and most others expect to be true. And so the Martin Luther King quote that I love here is, "Out of the mountain of despair, a stone of hope." And I think that's just beautiful, because we do need to be able to trust our providers, be it in any situation, whether it's a tax attorney, or whether it's a CPA, or whether it's an electrician, or whether it's a plumber. We need to be able to trust those whom we engage to help us, right? Everyone has a skill of some sort, and many use that skill in their vocation. And so therefore, whoever hires them expects that level of professionalism. And we certainly do expect that of our physicians and our dentists and our nurses, anyone in medical care and health care, and also within the legal community as well. The other crimes that I've seen, I'll tell you more: disclosure of confidential information, domestic violence, drug trafficking and possession, elder fraud. And so when I thought about elder fraud, I had to sit back for a moment, because I had tried to expose the elder fraud that I had witnessed with my mother in a nursing home, and really with my father as well in a hospital. And it hurt me so much to see them so vulnerable. And so then Martin Luther King quote that came to my mind was, "There can be no deep disappointment where there is no deep love." And so when we love, then we can experience the gamut of emotions. And for many of us whose children are not in our lives, we can only feel saddened for them, not necessarily for us, although we do hold that dear. At the same time, it's sad to not have those feelings of love for your own parents and want to spend every minute with them while they're here on planet Earth. Because again, we are here for such a short time. And as we age, we don't have as much, you know, energy and things like that. That's why they say, only really young people that are energized, they are the best parents because they can run after all the kids. And so, in terms of children holding their parents dear, that is like the most important thing, I think, because you see yourself in your parents. At the same time, they are your mirrors, and you see what you really love about yourself. And many times you see what flaws you believe that you have, and it's because of, oh, my father did that, or oh, my mother did that, or they did this, or this is how they taught me to behave, and so I didn't know any differently. But really, we can't blame anybody else. We have to accept total responsibility and be accountable for everything. Let's continue with the list. Embezzlement against the estate. Absolutely. There was employment fraud, entrapment, there's espionage, extortion, false declarations before the grand jury or court, false information and hoaxes, yes, false pretenses, yes, false profiles. And again, this is my version of this crime. False profiles using Photoshop on sex sites or dating sites to misrepresent the purchase, to enraged customers, to create dangerous situations for the victim. Now, did you get that? I know it's more than a mouthful. I did talk about it in one of the earlier videos this week. And it is, I heard that my face or my body or something was photoshopped to put me in a position where I was doing something that I wasn't doing because I wasn't even there. And it was, I guess people pay, and they think that they're going to meet up with you, right? And then when all of a sudden the person who has falsely put your profile up there ghosts them, then these customers or whatever, then they become enraged, and they're so mad at you, and yet you don't have anything to do with it. You don't even know what's going on, and the other person is just laughing and hoarding the money. And there are people that are doing this, and it's shocking. And it really, the Martin Luther King quote for that is, "Let no man pull you so low as to hate him." And truly, yes, we have to keep that in mind. And yet, it would be pretty easy to have some really strong feelings about someone who would stoop to such depths. Anyway, let's continue. False statements by professionals relating to healthcare and thus deprivation of appropriate treatment and care. Yes, we already talked about that. The intent to falsify guilt in terms of contempt of court. And so financial transactions with foreign governments, forgery, fraudulent activity in connection with electronic mail. Oh, many of us have had more than our share of that. We have all kinds of people saying they're us on the computers that they've hacked into. I don't know what kind of messages they're sending or receiving, but they're not coming for me. There's following, stalking, surveying, and harassing, and then fraud against the government and gang stalking. And when we talk about gang stalking, there's the quote that I just love is, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." And I say that because of the flying monkey theme, where people are approached, people are enticed, people are lured to take money to do these crimes of whatever the people in charge, my family, the ones that are paying and recruiting actually. And these people don't have any clue what they're doing, and they don't know They don't know me. They don't know others who are in my position. And yet, for some money, people do all kinds of things, right? And they have really no concept of the damage that they do and how they hurt innocent people, even when they've been fed just a bunch of lies about us. Eventually, the truth will come out. In the meantime, it's painful for everyone, because as they actually somewhere deep inside, they've got to know that they don't have all the facts, and that they are maliciously and deliberately causing pain to someone that they don't even know, just because they're getting paid to do so. They probably think, at some point, I think they probably think that they're doing a good deed, actually, and yet nothing could be further from the truth. Hacking crimes of internet, phone, and computer. Yes, we know about that, right? Healthcare fraud, harassment, homestead fraud, influencing jurors, insider trading crimes, insurance fraud, intellectual property fraud, intent to commit kidnapping, intent to commit murder, intent to commit serious injury via a motor vehicle. And so when I think of Martin Luther King again, there's a quote: "Violence is immoral because it thrives on hatred rather than love. And violence ends up defeating itself. It creates bitterness in the survivors and brutality in the destroyers." And that's so very true. There's interstate domestic violence. There's intimidation. There's investment and security fraud. There's larceny, theft, legal malpractice. We spoke of business and medical malpractice. There's legal malpractice. There's libel, which is a form of defamation along with slander. There's lying under oath. Yes, that's a big one, isn't it? Mail fraud. Anyone interfering with U.S. mail is guilty of a felony, actually. Manslaughter, both voluntary and involuntary. Medical healthcare fraud. So it's medical / healthcare fraud. Medical malpractice. Money laundering. Mortgage fraud. Although the quote is, "True peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice." And although we might wonder now, how does that really relate? I guess from my vantage point, I realized that when people are obsessed to take money, to gain possessions, and that's all they're focused on is destruction and selfish, satisfying their own voracious appetites of greed and avarice, and when the ego is just so out of control, they won't stop, you see. And so my parents were sacrificed. It was only after they were sacrificed there was, in some way, shape, or form, that there was any type of justice, because they weren't able to stop the insanity while they were alive. And then they became vulnerable by their perpetrators, so that they wouldn't be able, they became defenseless, really, is what the situation was. And so until they were sacrificed, there really was no peace for them. That is horrific. And there's obstruction of criminal investigations, right? And obstruction of justice. And officers failing to make reports. Pedophilia. Perjury. There's pirating of goods. There's poisoning of the food and water. And sometimes I really become very deeply saddened when I think of this, because I may visit 6 different grocery stores or whatever that are within a certain distance. And yet when I realize that there has been this conspiracy in order to provide food that is unhealthy, the food that has been tampered, food that has that extra dose of pesticide or whatever, food that is spoiled. When I realized that, I don't go to all those 6 grocery stores at the same time. So when they put something in one of those grocery stores, what happens to all the people who go and buy it? Or perhaps they, just use the GPS and they say, oh, she's going to this grocery store. Okay, pull out the pallet with all the stuff that she normally buys and put it there. I know that there is collateral damage. There has to be. And with the water supply, for sure. And so that deeply, deeply saddens me that my situation would actually be responsible for anyone else becoming compromised in any way. There's product tampering, and that goes along the same lines. There's prostitution, yes, property crimes. There's certainly public corruption. There's receiving the proceeds of extortion. Oh, absolutely. And so, crimes that have affected many of us on an intimate basis can be expanded to a national level, if not the global arena, actually. So when we talk about microcosmically what goes on here within our family, within our neighborhood, can also be extrapolated to include macrocosmically what goes on in the world at large. And so we see that many people are affected, not only within our little community, but as it reaches out its tentacles into other areas. So we know that certain things happen, and the problem is how do you catch it, right? And so in so many of these situations, we really can't be trying to figure out what's going on and how we're going to stop it, because in many situations we are powerless to stop it. The only thing we can do, and I was kind of saving this to the end, and maybe I will save it to the end, but it has nothing to do really with the crimes themselves. It has to do with the individuals and our level of consciousness, truly. So I'll finish with this: retaliating against a witness, victim, or informant. Yes, absolutely. We know that when someone snitches, they really do put themselves in danger. And yet, many times, if not for a person to come forward, many times those crimes would never be solved. And so that's all I have to say about that. So the Martin Luther King quote there is, it's not enough to say we must not wage war, right? It is necessary to love peace and sacrifice for it, right? You can't say what you don't want without saying what you do want, and then go after what it is that we do want in any situation, truly. And so we must concentrate not merely on the negative expulsion of war, but the positive affirmation of peace. And that is exactly, those were his words. And that is most certainly true. And it's beautifully said. There's robbery and sabotage and serious injury via public transportation. Yes, that was the traumatic brain injury with the bus. Sex crimes, sex exploitation, slander, solicitation to commit a crime of violence. Yes, remember I talked about the hitman who was offered $2 million to rid the planet of Maria by her dear sibling. Tampering with a witness, victim, or an informant. Tampering with consumer products. And again, that goes to when an individual is targeted. There's collateral damage in almost every case, truly. There's tax evasion, theft of trade secrets, torture. And again, we go to Martin Luther King, who says, hate is too great a burden to bear. I have decided to love. And so, yes, that basically says it all, doesn't it? But there's trafficking in counterfeit goods or services. There's trespassing, unauthorized removal of classified documents. There's vandalism. There's video voyeurism, violent crimes, There's white collar crimes, yes, and there's wire fraud. And so by giving you this list, I share with you things that over the last 25 years I have either experienced, I have witnessed, or I have been made aware of others having experienced them as a result of the thievery of my inheritance. And so I felt it beneficial to explain just how far people will go for money. And that deeply insults my heart. It insults my soul. Obviously, it insults my mind, but on a more visceral level, it truly insults my heart and soul, because I can't even imagine. And these are people that have plenty of money. They've never gone without. And yet they would put people on the street, commission others to, what's the term that they use now, to unalive them, to torture them, to have them kidnapped, to do all sorts of really malicious, malignant things. And so you can't really hate these people who hate you, because you realize that they're not playing with a full deck. They can't possibly play with a full deck and even think about committing any of these crimes, much less trying to pull them off, much less recruiting people. It's just beyond all sensibilities as far as I'm concerned. And lessons are being given and learned by all here on earth. And again, there's no escaping when all there is love, truly. And all there is energy in various forms. And so we are here to heal wounds and to awaken to who we really are as the divine beings that we are. And so when we can really embody that unconditional love that we know we are on a much grander scale, and really not allow ourselves to descend into like the bowels of hell or whatever, where these people who just kind of sit and clamor and think about all the ways that they're going to try to steal and rob and thieve and hurt and lie and gossip and gang stalk and do all of those things. I mean, really, you have to feel sorry for these people. And you certainly, it's not an eye for an eye at all. It's like, oh my gosh, you are really, really a sad and lost individual if all you think about are your clothes and your cars and your things and who you're going to steal from and who you're going to sleep with and what you're going to do and what you're going to eat. And, I mean, really, is that what we have sunk to truly? And yet when the world is just so beautiful and so wide open, and when we go out in nature and we see the butterflies and we see the birds and the bees and the kittens. Now I'm so enamored with kittens and cats, I could just play with them all day long. And so when we see that there is so much beauty around us, it this is when I get really emotional, because I think, my gosh, 120 crimes. People spent their lives, part of their lives, and it wasn't even a small part. It's been going on for 20 years. They have spent so much time trying to hurt me, trying to hurt others, trying to sabotage and malign and disrespect and gossip and all of that, just all that ridiculous stuff. And that's where they put their energy. And it truly is tragic. It truly is. And so for all human beings, here, there, everywhere, and all human beings who've been betrayed, remember, we really are here to learn to love ourselves. That's who we're here to love the most, first and foremost, despite what the world has told us or shown us. So it's incumbent that we put ourselves first in order to be able to care for others. So at times we must accept, and this is a Martin Luther King quote, we must accept finite disappointment, but never infinite hope. So at times we will have challenges, and we have had challenges, and it's not something that's going to go away, because what what would life be without challenges, right? That's why we're here. And whether they are huge mountains, which no, we don't want that, but whether they are just little bumps in the road. And it tests us. How are we going to handle it? How are we going to react? At some point on our journey, we remember that love is ultimately the only answer to any of mankind's problems. And it's true. It's That's very true. And that's when the fun begins, when we get that right. And so I thank you for listening. I thank you for watching. And I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. I have another video in store for you. And I'm really excited about that. And I hope that you were able to see the positivity in this list of crimes rather than, oh my gosh, this is so horrible. And of course it's horrible, um, because people are doing horrible things to others. And that's not to say that these people shouldn't face consequences for all of these, each and every one of these crimes. And yet at the same time, we have to understand that that is their level of awakening. That is exactly where they are, and that's how they behave. And that's how they justify their behavior, because they think that that's the right thing to do. And so may we see the larger picture. May we see the grander scheme in life. And we be so blessed in our journey while we are on this little blue-green cosmic ball. And so anyway, I wish you a beautiful evening, and I love you, and I'll see you soon.